Hey, 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 hey.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the latest episode. This is episode 4. Man, we made it to 4 episodes. I know that's not really a milestone, but I'm going to celebrate it anyway. Thank you for joining us this evening. This is the Binge podcast. I am your co host, G Oliver. I'm here with Nate Couser. Nate, what's going on?
I think I've watched so many movies in just the past month alone that my head feels heavy because all this stuff has been like heavy pieces of work for the most part.
We have discussed I don't know, maybe we make it heavy.
Well, no, that's the perspective that I want to come from it because I don't. So in the last episode, we talked a lot about what is it, Charm City Kings?
Charm City Kings, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so we
we
talked
we
a
had
lot,
a contentious debate.
right? But that I feel like art has gotten away from its social activism,
Hmm.
and we're going to discuss that a little bit with a couple of our documentaries in this episode,
Okay.
and that's one of the reasons why I include documentaries because often we see art activating or advocating for something or somebody, and it
Absolutely.
really I think artists have to, especially in this space that we're in right now, where we're in the middle of a pandemic and we're so restricted as artists. It's our responsibility to be the trendsetters, and that's in history. We noted we it's well noted that our artists have led the way. You know, every Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or Medgar Evers protest, there was always a singer that was always out front. And there was
Yeah.
often, Harry Belafonte
Hmm.
made sure that both Malcolm's wife and Martin's wife were taken care of after their death. And the reason that they still were able to live in our areas like Mount Vernon, for like Malcolm X in New York, is because of people like Harry Belafonte and various artists that kept Martin and Malcolm and Medgar financially capable, because these were mainly pastors and ministers,
Yeah.
so they weren't necessarily rich and wealthy,
No, not at all.
but they were aided by artists. And I want us to get back to that space where artists are not just painting pretty pictures and selling tickets and
Yeah.
pushing marketing movies and such, but we're actually aiding, and the work that we're doing is speaking to that truth, but it's
Mhm.
also doing something about the problem.
Absolutely.
And it's not enough to just highlight the truth. We got to do something about it.
We got to
And the
start
powers
acting
that
on
be
it.
are
We got to
too
be
busy.
active.
Right. The powers, the people that we put into office are often arguing over power. So we've been swept under the rug in many cases. So we have to
Hmm.
activate. We have to allocate and fight for actual action and not just the ideals. Artists are no longer sitting in a room participating over, ideals or philosophical conversations. But we got to get to work because we dying off, and we got to fix that.
I hear that.
But we have a really
So
good lineup today.
yeah, we do. So thank you all for listening in. This is the Binge Worthy Podcast. The goal of our production is to review and discuss the historical, social, and cultural contribution and impact of film and television
Look at him!
on
Look at
our
him!
lives.
He
So
is remembered.
we have a dynamic lineup today
Hmm.
for our throwback. So we talk about film and television and and particular categories. These are highly interchangeable. But today for our throwback, we pick some works from the past and we discuss them and dissect them a little bit. We're going to be talking about the Silence of the Lambs
Hmm.
and Spike Lee. Another Spike Lee joint. I feel like we got a Spike Lee joint every time. Today
Yeah.
we're going to be talking about the classic School Days.
Mm.
And our
Controversial school days.
controversial School Days. Our next category is going to be something new, something recent, or and by recent, I want you to understand, like, we're not always going to be covering like the latest release. But by something recent, we mean something within the last year or so, maybe a little longer. Something that has had a come out within, say, the last 2 years. I don't really want to put a time frame on it, but it is something that would still be considered recent,
Something's current, still current,
or current. Today, our two works for our current or something new is going to be A Fall from Grace, directed by Tyler Perry, and the recently released Netflix original movie. It's a French film called Cuties, which caused a lot of controversy over the last about a month and a half.
Unnecessarily.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in a few moments. We also have a section which is entitled Adaptations or Remakes. So these are works that are based on another art form or another art medium. So it's either an adaptation or a remake of a previous film. Today, we're going to be discussing another Tyler Perry film, For Colored Girls. And we're going to be discussing the HBO original TV show, The Leftovers. Our TV show for today, although The Leftovers is a TV show, we put that in the adaptation category. It is based on a work of fiction, a book. We're going to be, but for our TV show, we're going to be talking about How to Get Away with Murder, starring the I can't even think of the most incredible actress of our generation. And then we also like to discuss some documentaries, because those are very, very important to this medium. The two documentaries that we're going to be discussing today is What Happened, Miss Simone, which is on Netflix. Actually, I believe both of these are on Netflix. What Happened, Miss Simone, and The Two Killings of Sam Cooke. Nate, you ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right, brother.
So
The
it's
Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs.
Hannibal Lecter.
I was never really a big fan of the movie.
Really? Tell us why.
One.
Are you about to go into your? You about to go into your Baltimore negativity rant?
No, it's not. It's well. That's the crazy thing, because it opens up here in Baltimore, and that was the uncomfortable kind of nature of it. Like, oh, this could happen here, and they were at the Symphony Orchestra House. Like, this is just weird, but it's a movie that I think everybody has probably seen at least once, but it definitely I don't know. It just I appreciated it, and for me, I think we have to categorize horror films.
Yeah,
and not everything is gory horror, but everything is some type of psychological horror films, and I think we need to do a better job of classifying them, because it wasn't a scary movie. You know, the idea of somebody killing someone and eating them is a little psychotic, maybe a lot, but it definitely I don't know, it was just weird, because I watched this as a kid.
Yeah,
so this was weird.
Did it scare you as a kid?
Well, it wasn't so much scary, but it was like,
did it freak you out?
Like, well, the reference to being in Baltimore, that was the like,
that's
this
what
happening in
out.
Baltimore, like this happening here, and I live downtown, so that was like, what is going on? What is happening?
I think that it's funny you were saying like we can't classify it as a horror movie, and I wouldn't either.
It's a general horror movie
at this point. But right. I realized that a lot of that is perspective and like the time. I don't, our generation, Nate, I think we were lucky enough to be kids that came up in a time where I think the last really great horror movies happened. Because outside of kids, like, what have you seen in the last like 2 decades that's really been authentically scary? I mean, like, had you looking over your shoulder walking home, or made it hard for you to sleep tonight.
Well, and see, the reason I think that's happened because everything is CGI and green screen, and that doesn't like fake does not scare me.
Yeah.
Even though
I
even
think
the
it's
real stuff, it wasn't like somebody was actually being killed, but I like the story plot. But now everything is, this larger than life animal that we know not real coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
The music, and it was subtlety is, and that's what I always say. Less is better. So when you
Less is,
got
I
all those
think in horror,
extras,
less is better. I do agree with you in that. But I also think it's just, and you might be right about the CGI and all that. But a part of me just thinks it's like a desensitization
yeah,
of the populace, and I'm not even talking about, and maybe it's about the movies, but I think it might even go deeper than the movies. But I think it's just a
video
reflection
games,
of the
cartoons.
times that we live in. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
remember my mom telling me the story. I'm pretty sure that my parents' first date was Star Wars, the original Star Wars, but somewhere around that, one of the first movies that they went to see together was The Exorcist. And
What in the world?
like, when you used to hear about the Exorcist and how people left the theater vomiting, right? And religious groups were like telling people not to go see it. And
Mm-hmm.
my parents, like my mom couldn't watch it. Like, her and my dad, they had to leave the
Yeah,
theater. um and, and you think about that, and if you ever watch a documentary or you read up on some of the history of like some of those classic horror movies, Night of the Living Dead and things like that, you kind of get this similar experience from people, and you don't get that today. And I think it
yeah,
has to do with us being really desensitized. I love this movie, mostly just because I think it's an enjoyable film. Like, today, I would classify this as what we would call a psychological thriller. There's
yeah,
nothing that really creeps me out or it makes me scared. Again, I like the connection to Baltimore. I felt like the connection is really just about the subject matter being these mental health, or like these psychotic disorders that no one else knows how to
yeah,
deal with. So, of course, Baltimore being the city that houses Johns Hopkins, right?
yeah.
That's how I looked at it. Um,
But we
in the
used to have a
last
lot
episode,
more,
we talked
other than
about.
Shepherd Pratt. We used to have a lot of
Oh yeah, we got
centers
the right.
for
We
that
got the
outside
Shepherd
of John
Pratt. We
Hopkins.
got the what's the other one down there by Hopkins? There's Shepherd Pratt, and then there's what's the one for the kids? Kennedy Krieger.
Yeah.
So mental health and just hospitalization and
Mm-hmm.
those types of things. Like, I see why it was set in Baltimore, but
Yeah.
more often, but honestly, I love this movie for one reason and one reason only, and that's really, in the last episode we kind of touched on how I think we were talking about Little Fires Everywhere and how great Reese Witherspoon's performance was, and part of it was because she had never played a character like that before, and we
Mm-hmm.
saw that with Anthony Hopkins, Sir Anthony Hopkins, who was always playing these really refined characters at the
Well,
end of the
he
day.
stayed with that. That was
Um,
his theme, though.
what do you mean? Well, this was the first time. This was the first Hannibal Lecter movie.
Right.
This is the movie where well, it actually isn't the movie where that character is introduced. However,
Mm-hmm.
it is the first time it's played by Anthony Hopkins. And yeah, like
But
it
just
was
that
just is an
suspenseful
incredible
characterization that he
performance.
has, that's something that he carries with all his movies. So I expected that out of him. But it because his characters always get dark. So he did a great job of
Well, I would
building
say
on that.
before that, I don't know if you can really say that about his roles before that.
He was
I
always the
think a
dark
lot. Well,
character.
no, I mean, like,
He was never really the bad guy, but
I think that he always had incredible depth as an
yeah,
actor. This is Anthony Hopkins we talking about, but to watch him play something that sinister, right? And I think there's something about sinister characters on screen that make for a little bit more entertainment. You know what I mean? Like we watched Denzel play the good guy forever, and then he did Training Day, and I, you know, like I think that he has stronger performances, but I do respect why that performance in Training Day stands out, because we just never seen him play a character like that, and he did it so well.
Yeah,
he did it so well. He chewed that scenery the same way that Anthony Hopkins chewed this Hannibal Lecter character. But no, I mean, I think that it's just a good story. I mean, you know, when you look at psychological thrillers today, a lot of them are predictable. A lot of them really just, you know, from a storytelling perspective, a writing perspective, don't really hold a lot of weight. And I think The Silence of the Lambs is one of those early psychological thrillers that really, really does hold its weight.
Right.
Yeah. So I definitely rate it binge worthy. What about you?
It's something that I'll watch like randomly. It's not something that I'm be like, oh, let me go find Silence of the Lamb. I'm not gonna run to go see it, but it's something I'll watch if it's on at the moment.
Got you.
So what's next?
School Daze, Spike Lee joint. This is Spike Lee's take on Black college life. Starring a semi-young Lawrence Fishburne. Lawrence Fishburne, in my mind, starting to become one of them actors that I don't think he was ever really young.
He was. I mean, but
he was in this. No, he was. I'm just kidding. But he was absolutely him. This is a young, a young. I think was he Lawrence by this time? Yeah, he was Lawrence.
Yeah, he had a lot of younger roles.
No, because you know he was Larry first, right? He's Larry Fishburne at first. And then he changed it up to Lawrence. He
wanted to get serious. I think this
is Spike Lee. Just he be doing whatever. Like the musical and the drop dead in the middle. It just, you know what I'm saying, of this semi-serious film. But like you were saying in the last episode when we was talking about She's Gotta Have It, man. Like he's just so. He can be so avant-garde, like just out the blue, and then go back to the regular story as if nothing ever happened.
But and not taking away from his creativity, but I think and how I project he does his films and directs and cast, I think he's trying to show Hollywood we can do this too, and I don't have a problem with that. Yeah, but I think it does take away from some of the storytelling. And this in particular, we just got some. He just did an interview not too long ago where he says that Bill Cosby stole. What was the TV show he did?
A Different World. Yeah,
he alleges that Bill Cosby stole the idea for school from School Daze, and for me, School Daze.
I wouldn't call that stealing, but I could see that. I can see how a movie like School Daze may have inspired Bill Cosby to do his own work about. Like they're too different to say.
It's too different. One, School Daze didn't make me want to go to college. It actually did the opposite. Different World made me want to go to college. Yes, because life. Did you watch School Daze?
Yeah.
This wasn't the life that you wanted. Like you were gonna be separated based on your skin tone, and you know, I mean, just a depiction of how they treated the women, how the guys kind of monkeyed the women around and pitted them against each other, and then ultimately, I hated how it ended for Gene. I skipped saying Gina, but Tisha Campbell. I hated how that ended. Like it didn't make me want to go to college. If this is college life, I'm gonna just work my way through. But Different World, on the other hand, it had a more natural experience for college. It wasn't typical, but it definitely gave you a sense of what HBCU was. Right. This was this Black culture within a college. It didn't really.
So I always felt like it went a little deeper than that. Because A Different World.
Did you want to go to college and experience those things? after watching them?
No, I mean, okay, I completely understand what you're saying if you're
Mhm.
looking at it from that perspective, but and I guess that's the only real like way you could look at it. Like if you think about like the first time you and I would have saw School Days, right? Like we would have been
Right,
relatively young and not really been old enough to understand the nuance within the story that he was telling, right?
right.
I think that again, you have this issue of like the plot and then the backdrop, right?
Hmm.
I think that Spike Lee utilized college life as a backdrop to talk about interrelational issues within the Black community. Um, and you're absolutely right. And I don't remember how I viewed School Days the first time I saw it, and I would have been relatively young at
Yeah.
that time.
Mhm.
But I know that like now when I look back on it, I don't see it like I look at a different world and I see a different world as a pretty accurate depiction of college life,
Well,
right?
this
I look
film
at
made me
School
not want to
Days
play.
and I
It
look at,
honestly did.
oh, let me tell you something. First of all, like there's a reason why when you pledge, like they don't talk about that shit. Right? There's no video about pledging because there's
No.
an ugly side of it. Or there's that other side of it. And
It's
you can call some
foolishness.
people might call it ugly. Some people you use the word foolishness.
Yeah.
And that might and like all of that might be valid, but there is another side of pledging, and I think that's why they don't talk about that side of it.
And that's what
Um,
I saw. I mean, that was what I
and that
viewed
was very prominent
it to
in the
be.
film as well. But again, I really felt like all of that was a backdrop to really kind of put front and center a lot of the issues, that
It was it was a
the
it was I think it was like a splice or a slice up of um I don't want to go as far as minstrelsy, but it really just divided us on issues that we took for granted in our communities that I saw. I definitely within my family and in my even my circle of friends, I saw, the light skin versus dark skin or
Mhm.
um uh the building of brotherhood and the toxic nature of brotherhood. And I saw many issues like that, but the big, I mean, and they made it prominent, but they really kind of boosted up that whole light skinned girl, good hair versus dark skinned girl, bad hair. That I think many people took that away from this film,
Mhm.
and that became a kind of
But that was
thing
a
that went on.
real but that was a real issue in the Black community at that time. This division between,
Still
and
is.
I think the ending of School Days really just plays to the fact that at the end of the day, we all Black. And like these really unfortunate things that aren't fair can happen to all of us.
Yeah, and
And it don't
yeah,
matter. You know what I'm saying? Like what your skin complexion is. And I think that was a point to be driven home.
right.
Um, like it's funny that we started off talking about the depiction of college life because if you ask me to name a few things that made me like a few movies or films, I
Mhm.
don't think I would have named School Days as one.
Well, that was
And I think that's because I
you never saw
never,
them in class.
huh?
You never saw them in class.
No, I just never looked at School Days. I like when I think about School Days, I think about like if you ask me what School Days was about, I would say it's about like the interrelationships or the inner dynamics of in the Black community.
But
Not
it
so
it
much
would.
like the fact that it was set on a college campus to
But I
me that
think
is just the setting.
I think if once you rewatch this again, pay attention to just the overall themes of it, and that's definitely how we treat each other in its
None,
simplest
no
form.
doubt.
But these things are, I'm not saying very specific to HBCUs, but the ugliness
Of course,
that
they're
we often
specific to
find.
HBCUs.
No, but well, it happens on all campuses actually.
Oh well,
But
I mean,
it
I'm talking
really,
about. Okay, I see what you're saying, but
but it just this movie right here, it made you forget that it was about a HBCU, that it was depicting life at Howard. It was supposed to be not so much depicting life. I don't want to say that, but it was based on his experience at Howard, and
okay.
it really just it showed you not the good side. You know, so when Spike Lee came out and alleged that Bill Cosby stole a different world, I think even if Bill Cosby looked at this and was like, I can make a TV show out of this, he took everything about this movie and turned it on his the other side. Like actual college life.
Mm-hmm.
And this right here is this movie depicted why some of my friends who went to school to pledge and never
Yeah.
finished, this is what School Days is. You
Mm.
know, people who went to school for the atmosphere and not for the context or the actual of building relationships, but people who went to college for college life and not for college. That's
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why this movie is often not looked at as college life, because it showed us why people go to school for the wrong reasons.
Mm.
And what you know,
So you saying it was too real?
it was real, but it was one-sided real. You
Mm.
know, again, show us college life. If you go put this on a campus, show us college life outside of the things that could go wrong. Like, why are you going to school to pledge, and why are you, you know, why are you so focused with what you look like? You know, the jigaboos and I forgot what you call the light skinned girls, but why is this your life? Why is your school life so surrounding your relationships and not the experience, all of the experiences? It was very one sided. That's, you know, that's kind of where I
Mhm.
see it. But I
So
love the movie itself. I'm a big fan of Spike Lee, but I love the story. I'm always
mhm,
focused on the story that's being told and not all the spectacle what you see.
gotcha. All right, I still rate it binge worthy.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
I'll
Um,
definitely watch it.
definitely check that out. Moving on to our new category. Um, who you ready for this, Nate?
Hmm.
Our first work in our new category is going to be a fall from grace. The Netflix. I think it debuted directly to Netflix, but it is um the first film to be produced by Tyler Perry um at Tyler Perry Studios, if I remember correctly. I believe this was the first film produced by Tyler Perry at his brand new studio.
Hmm.
And
I'm
mm,
all for I'm all for spectacle. I'm all for scenic quality, um, good scenic quality. I'm for um, good casting. I love the things that make a movie. So the movie itself is very to the side to me compared to all the different components that make it up. And one of the things that I want to see from Tyler Perry before I spend air of the dollar on going to see anything that he makes, um, is I want attention to detail. Oh, now I'm just watching this because I don't like watching train wrecks. But I purposely watched this and I listened more than I watched because I didn't want to see all of those mistakes that people were pointing out over the last couple months. I didn't want to see any of those things because people got into the wigs and the continuity and, you know, why does he have a hairpiece on and he doesn't need one, and which it was a bad wig, and was he trying to make him a kind of a book into the light skinned character, the other guy, the police officer, was, you know, the continuity of the storyline, all those things, there was no attention to detail. It's like, let's get this out there. And
Right.
that
And
to
he did
me,
say he filmed the whole thing in what, 14 days, I think it was.
no, it was like 5 days.
Was it 5?
Yeah, it wasn't even 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But one of the things that I knew this was going to be a bad movie when they did an interview with the three ladies, the lawyer Felicia Rashad and Cicely Tyson.
Yeah.
They did an interview with all four of the ladies, and I can't remember the other lady, the league lady's name. I can't. Her name escapes me right now.
Mm-hmm.
But and uh, Felicia Rashad's response to the interviewer's question was, "How was this experience for you?" And when she didn't come out with, she normally, being a real classy woman she is, she takes her time and she gives you it in her pacing, but she didn't say much.
Mm.
And I knew it was one of those things where you did something that you wasn't proud of, but you did your best. And
Mm.
Felicia Rashad made this movie. Um, she made this movie. Um, Talent that you could have utilized more. You left her in a room in a house for most of the movie. Um, I'm tired of seeing pretty faces from Tyler Perry.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that's all that he shows us, and not,
So did
calling
you
nobody ugly.
appreciate this movie
I
in
did.
light of that?
I I I I did, on the side of it wasn't all these pretty faces that were tragic characters that were, it's always the tragic light skinned person, and that wasn't so in this movie.
Okay.
But continuity, storyline, casting, it all has to go together. And then where you set it at, okay, you can build this big pretty studio, but if the continuity of your work, the same detail that you put into the set, you have to
Mm-hmm.
put that into your directing and in your writing. And I'm just disappointed that Tyler Perry is a billionaire now off of foolishness.
You talking about this film, or are
I'm talking
you more
about
talking about the
everything
body of
but
work?
the body of work. But this film for me, it could have been so much better if there was attention to detail and you wasn't trying to get something done in 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can tell. However, it looks like he doesn't shoot it from ending to beginning, or beginning to end, or it's out of sequence. Some of the stuff, some of the mistakes that I did get a chance to see.
Mm-hmm.
If you had a great showrunner that could help you out in terms of continuity, what are we shooting today? Okay, if we're shooting this stuff in this room, let's shoot everything in this room, so everything is, the continuity of everything is good. But I just the story was so, oh my god,
Mm.
it wasn't good. The Some of the acting was off, and I hate to go in on this movie like that, but it was a reason I didn't pick this. This was you picking this,
I picked
and
this
I would
movie.
not have. This movie would have been episode like
No, I mean,
500,
it's a
season
recent movie.
20.
It's Tyler Perry. We need to talk about it. Like,
It is, but
we can't just wait. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel
but
like
that's a waste of our time watching this, because you don't like this movie. I
no,
love
no.
Felicia Rashad's. Felicia Rashad's.
I just have a theory about this movie, and I've had it ever since I
What
saw
is
it.
it?
So first of all, like, it is not a particularly well done film, and not because it's bad. It's rushed. I just looked it up to confirm. I thought it was 2 weeks, which, if you know anything about films, that's
That's
not
still
time
fast.
to really
2 weeks is fast.
a full film feature film. But this was done, like Nate was correct. This was done over the course of 5 days.
Yes.
And I just I'm always find myself trying to give Tyler Perry the benefit of the doubt, probably much to my own demise.
Because we all rooted for him in the beginning, but we gave him
I want him to
allowances.
win. I mean, I want
Right.
everybody black to win.
Yeah, but
Um,
specifically him because we see the journey, but you focus on what people saw and not what people heard or what people really could see in this. And you tried to be so Hollywood that you he writes all his work and directs it so he doesn't have to pay for union people. He does that. So and
mhm.
you cutting corners, that's how you became a billionaire.
Well, that's how
So
all
that
the
makes you know.
whoa. Time out, time out. Let me and I want to make
Uh-huh.
something clear. That's how. First of all, that's how all of your studios became the major motion picture studios,
Yeah,
and
but
that's why.
that means
Hold
that's
on,
all we have to do with it.
hold on for a minute. Hold on. Let me just clarify. Let me clarify. First of
Mm-mm.
all of your major motion picture studios, they became the motion picture studios because of that. And the
We
reason
gotta get
why
better.
we've never seen any independent movie studios pop up since, like, think about it, Nate. Like, you have
Mhm.
production houses and whatnot, but the studios have been the same since like the 1950s. It's been Warner Brothers Studios, Paramount Studios,
Mhm.
Sony Pictures. These are all the same studios. So you have all these production houses like HBO and Netflix. They all use these studios, right? Like
Mhm.
Pinewood Studios is used. That was the one that was utilized, right? That's because when they made their billions, there was
Mhm.
no union. They paid what they felt like paying, or they paid what they felt like they could pay, or they paid whatever they were paying. That's what they were paying. There was no union. And that's why you have like 5 or 6 studios that's been the same 5 or 6 motion picture studios for the last, what, 6, 7, 8 decades. The reason why you don't have any other studios is because when you factor in the union and these rates that
Mhm.
must be paid, the only people who can afford them are the major picture studios. But remember, never forget that they are the major motion picture studios because they got in the game before people
And
like
I
us
and I
unionized. Now,
completely I
let me just
completely
say this.
understand that.
Let me also say this. Tyler Perry don't work. He don't force nobody to work for him. And because of what he's doing and the people who understand what he's trying to do, that's why there have been union actors who have worked for
Mhm.
Tyler Perry. Taraji Henson ain't become no union actor because of Tyler Perry. She was a union actor before she started starring in
Mhm.
Tyler Perry films. So was Idris Elba. So is Felicia Rashad and Cicely Tyson, who have been in his movies before.
And I
Okay.
get all of
Um,
that. I do, but at
so my
some
theory,
point
let me just tell
we
my
have
theory
to
because
get
we
better.
we've been on this for a minute, and you're right, we have to get better. However, I do understand the business side of things just a little bit, and my theory is this: Tyler Perry probably put every dime he had into building that studio,
Mhm.
which means that he probably doesn't have the capital that he needs to really invest in those works. But if he can do a couple subpar films that do well, then he can start reinvesting. And as he reinvests, you'll start to see the more professional quality. Because A Fall from Grace just makes no sense when you think about what came before from Tyler Perry, and you can feel whatever however you want about, you everybody has their opinion about Tyler Perry's works, but nothing from a technical perspective has ever been as bad as A Fall from Grace.
It
And the
is
only
well,
reason
you haven't seen any of his plays.
oh no, well I'm not, oh no, his plays are something. I feel like the plays were something different. I feel like the plays were on the Chitlin circuit. Like, I don't think anybody was going to his plays expecting it to be, but I'm talking about his films, right? The films from a technical perspective, like the some of the silly and simple mistakes some of the ridiculous costume and wardrobes. I mean, like, yo, Medea was more put together than this dude in that wig, right? In A Fall from Grace.
That's what I'm that's my
And
point.
there's no logical reason for A Fall from Grace, which actually wasn't as bad of a story. I just think it was rushed. And there's no reason for it to be like that. And then and I take this also to that show, the first show that he just put on, the one about the people in the White House. I watched a couple of episodes of that, and like A Fall from Grace, there is a dip in quality in the production. Before you even get to some of the ridiculous plot shenanigans, there's the simple production. And I really do believe that he's trying to build himself back up, because he just invested everything into building up this studio.
Yeah, but and that's the same thing that we get from the pretty faces. Pretty sets don't make the movie.
Well, there were no pretty sets. That's what I'm saying. There was nothing pretty about A Fall from Grace. There's nothing pretty about that.
Well, I can say the quality of the sets were more realistic. So when I say pretty sets, that's what I mean. And I think the sets were really good. I think they were up to the quality of some of the bigger movie theater sets. But it's just the attention to detail. Like, and I see that happening from backwards with him. Like, you're putting all that into your sets.
Well, my theory,
everything, like this reminds me of community and academic theater, where everybody gets their own costumes.
You're absolutely right. That was the exact feel I got from it. I just think that there's a reason behind that, because it's not like he has it's not like that's how his movies have been.
Serious, but no, he is this. This is how his movies have been. But that, like you say, we often look at, because I remember Shamar Moore and a Diary of a Mad Black Woman. Like, he had that same bad wig going. Like, he had the cornrow wig. Wow. Like, he has not lived life, because there's no true realism in anything that we see from him. And he hasn't, he knows people, so he's writing based on people he know, but he hasn't really lived life. And that's something that, as a performer, I think I suffered from, because I don't really watch TV. I'm just starting to watch TV, and I watch movies, but I'm watching for the technical stuff, but I'm not really living and experiencing the art of what I do. And I see that in him in a way where I can fake it a little bit. And I've been able to fake it, but it's just, he got to do better. And I understand cost, but business, you're only as good as what people saw from you. And you have a niche, just like the urban novels have had. And you haven't really taken your core audience anywhere beyond where you started from. But
so, with the exception of the wig, I don't recall ever seeing a film produced by Tyler Perry that was as badly done as A Fall from Grace. And I mean, his films are not technical marvels to look at, but there were amateur mistakes and A Fall from Grace,
because nobody is he has not hired the crew like a showrunner.
Nah, because I mean, like, even if he was able to hire his regular crew, like,
no, but that's
and then
not
working,
good enough.
why would you film a movie in 5 days? Like, he's never done that before.
Yeah, but he's trying to just crank work.
Was it just that you couldn't afford to keep people on set for more than 5 days?
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. So that's the idea. But if you hire qualified individuals, and I keep saying a showrunner, so a showrunner is kind of a step up from a stage manager, a production manager. They're the production manager. So they will keep the continuity and the budget of what you're doing intact. You know, they call the actors on, they give out the call sheets, they that's their job, and he doesn't have qualified people. You have people who have been with you forever, but we see these same issues in community theater. This person isn't necessarily qualified for the job. They just have been the only one doing it. So they've gotten good at what they do, but they haven't been stamped with approval or quality approval to them. But I I I have nothing else for it. I didn't mean to go in like that, but that's why I didn't
No,
watch it.
it's
My
fine.
instinct tells me no.
It's
So
fine. I mean,
I'll
no,
still
like
watch stuff,
Tyler Perry
but
movies are all hit or miss. I mean, I watched. I'll be honest. I watched it. I watched it so he could get the. I know that like profitability wise, like for black artists, it's got to be something tied into how many views it get. So I'm gonna give you my view. You know what I'm saying? Like it ain't
you
killing
could have
me.
watched this on YouTube.
I've seen other stuff. I mean Netflix, YouTube. It don't matter if you're gonna watch it, you watch it.
Mm. I'm just over it.
No, but it wasn't a very well done movie at all.
That was a waste of their
I'm
time,
still gonna
baby.
say it's binge worthy because I found it quite comical. Like I laughed through the whole movie. So if you got a sense of humor like me, I'm gonna give it highly binge worthy because like just pointing out kind of like a lot of the inconsistencies and then some of the lapses in performance is really funny. It's definitely not your usual Tyler Perry though. It is far below what you're used to seeing from a Tyler Perry production.
And it's the last thing I'm gonna say because we got to move on. But the storyline or the what I see him going after in this, I like where because he was trying to step out of his normal character, but he has a formula. The black lead woman has to be struggling and have to go through something, and she overcomes in the end. And I understand that because the reason I always watch Tyler Perry, and I think what was missing from this was church. He got church scenes, but it wasn't like the
Not
normal
like them old
formula.
Tyler Perry movies.
Right.
Nah,
So that's why I would watch the
Church was
old
like
movies.
somewhere near just
That's
before the
where it almost
climax.
ended. Right. No, that's where the movie normally ends with. And then
Yeah.
you get all the good stuff that come after that. But
Right.
that's what is if that's your formula, stick to that.
Right.
I'm not saying don't do anything outside of yourself, but make sure the elements that kept people going with you is what you keep and you get rid of all the other stuff. So that's it. I'm done. I knew
All
I
right.
didn't like this to
You
begin with.
ain't like it. All right. Nate ain't like it. I say watch it just if you want to laugh. Like it's a good comedy.
We actually got two of his pieces on here. That's crazy. I said we actually got two of his pieces on here.
We do have two of his pieces. Hopefully we'll be able to have a little bit of a different conversation. No, we're not. Actually, only because we probably gonna agree. But before we get to that, we have our other work for our recent or current section of the show, and that is the show or the movie Cuties. Which I'm gonna let Nate take it away. This was his selection. Cuties, however, because of this graphic right here. All right. So Cuties is actually a movie. It's a coming of age tale about a young girl who joins up with a dance group. In the movie, it has nothing to do with what you see depicted here. But it's a French movie, and for some reason, for the American version of this film, they chose this cover, which caused an incredible amount of controversy.
So this is my selective outrage for
well, hold on. Let me finish. Let me just
Go ahead.
finish. Let me finish for a second. So, so the French, the actual cover for the movie is much different. This was specifically designed by the marketing team at Netflix because they thought that this would get us Americans more interested in watching the movie. It backfired horrendously. Most people, including myself, was completely kind of like taken aback and disgusted by it. I thought it was hugely inappropriate. These girls look to be no more than 11, 12, 13 at best. And skimpy clothing and very suggestive poses. And I'm not against girls being on a dance team, and I know that sometimes that stuff can be risque. But I think some people questioned the cover initially, and then to find out that this was the cover that was specifically curated for American audiences.
Was it curated, or they just chose a different scene to put on the cover?
From what I read, and from what I read, it seemed as though they felt that this specific cover, I don't think that this was a cover that was actually ever used anywhere else. This was something that Netflix designed.
It wasn't designed. Do you know this is actually a scene from the movie? It wasn't designed.
They might
chose a different scene.
That's cool. I'm just saying that it was specifically done. This is not the way they were marketing the movie everywhere else.
Well, I think where we are, and I most of the people who had remarks did not watch the film. And
no, nobody. So first of all, let me just be clear on what you're saying right there, Nate, because all of this controversy was before the film came out. So if you remember, about 2-3 months ago, Netflix made some changes. So where there's a section on Netflix where you can see and sometimes even see the trailer of upcoming films. And some of these films are not coming out for like a month.
But do you notice that marketing though? How they market once the film is on Netflix, the cover changes.
It does change.
Every time you go through it,
I have seen that.
Change. But my issue with it was, even after the film came out, people did not watch the film and felt like this, and people who watched it still did not let people in on this was an actual clip. And this, I chose this photo because there were their promotional flyers, and then their screenshots that they use as flyers from the movie. This was a screenshot that they used from the movie. This wasn't the official flyer for the movie. But I think where we were in this country, I think that what they did do, and I'm not a big supporter of Netflix in general, but what they did do was they sensationalized what was actual sensationalized in the movie. And it was so many people saying, if you a dad, don't watch this. Men shouldn't watch this, as if we were in danger of seeing this and being turned on by it. That's the one problem that's the biggest problem that I have.
That's a really big issue. This idea that I get why people were upset just from the image itself,
because it wasn't even any issues of older. It was some slight situations where young men were looking at them, but for the most part, that wasn't the storyline. That was what people who had not watched it or did not watch it thoroughly enough or watched it with a bad intention got from this, because it wasn't even an issue of young men watching them or older men watching them. It was just the young women in this, it was 5 young ladies at one point, but the 4 young ladies in this, it was what they chose to do to get noticed. And a young lady that's actually in the front of it, she made the biggest stretch in this. And they treated her like she was, like, this to me was, if She's Gotta Have It was younger. If she was like a teenager. Versus 20 something. And they gave this young lady those adult qualities and that adult mindset and that adult struggle in this. And that was a problem for me. But just like
but that's something that the rest of the world not struggling with that type of stuff like we are. Like
right.
in
Exactly.
other in a
Exactly.
lot of European countries, and even in a lot of countries around the world, like sex isn't considered taboo.
No,
Right. And like, don't get
there are
like,
rules
and like,
for
there's
it,
people who be like, so
but
what, child sex? No, no. What I'm saying is that, like,
right.
in America, we're celebrating, like in America, like I was reading in the news the other day, like it was like a big thing that I can't remember what state it was, but they just, and it might not even been a state, it might have just been a city that they
Mhm.
unanimously, or they had it on the ballot, teaching sex education in
Right.
school, right? And like it's like this big thing because here in America, like you don't discuss sex with children, right? Like
Right.
that's like our thing. And we tend to think that we set the tone for the rest of the world when in truth,
No.
like the rest of the world is like, no, I want my child to know the ins and outs, and I want them to know about sex as early as possible so that they can be better informed and make better decisions. So this is a French film, right? And like we try to take that and spin it like, oh, that just means Frenchmen are running around doing all types of sexual escapades
No,
with, and
sex
that's
is
not
just
what it
not as
that's
closeted
not
as it
even
is
what it
here.
means. It just means that they have they're comfortable discussing sex across age brackets, and they're not sitting there trying to hide their children from sex as if it's this thing that doesn't really exist, or it's just some myth that you're gonna have to deal with when you're adults. And I think part of a lot of the issues that we have in America is that that's how we treat sex. Is
But
if
even if you look at this movie, and once you see it, then I think we'll have an even further conversation about it. But I think one of the issues is we picked out, and it was I was so angry at a lot of the women who jumped to watch this with an attitude,
mm-hmm,
because that's where we started getting those posts about men. If you're dead, if you got a child or a girl, don't watch this film. And I was like, we criminalize the growth process in our children. We criminalize our children by kind of suppressing them. But you can't suppress growth. It's gonna happen.
mm-hmm,
Children are gonna get puberty. They're gonna, grow hair and breast, and they're gonna be exposed to the world. They're gonna have insecurities. And the one issue that I think the women should have gotten out of this was that identity in terms of insecurities and how it's groomed in us. Nobody talked about the fact that the father in this film that we don't ever see has
mm,
two wives. They don't talk about that. That
mm,
wasn't even an issue. This young lady, the black young lady, well, there's actually two black young ladies in this. But the other one is more so along for this ride. But this one in the center, she's the main character. But her
mm-hmm,
dad and her mom and her are living in one place, and her dad has gone back to Africa and brings back a whole wife. And then the mom has to go through this thing of, do I accept this or not? And they have to
mm,
deal with this. And once you see it, you'll be able to see. Well, if that's this scene right here is one of the last is at one of the last scenes of it. It's one of the the last scenes of the movie. It's a whole movie ahead of that deals with a young lady coming to grips with her body changing and sexuality and trying to project sex outward to get attention.
mm,
So it has a lot of undertones of identity and self-esteem and sexualization of self. It's not
mm,
even the world doing it to her. It's something that's coming from within
within.
and
Mm,
being projected outward just for attention. And it was so much that people could have gotten from this. And the fact that I work in after school programs and art programs. I'm not saying they're dressed that scantily, but that's not that far from how children dress. So I need you to be around children more. And I need for people to not be so broken themselves that looking at this picture. I didn't see sex when I looked at that. One, because I'm not attracted to children. But secondly, and somebody who's been molested, I understand that idea of having a certain level of brokenness and then seeing things through those broken lenses.
Mm.
But that means you have to improve because dancers dance like that, so they aren't restricted. They dance with clothes like that, so they aren't restricted. But I was more heated at the responses and the comments than the actual film itself. It
Mm.
was an okay film, but I was more upset at the comments.
So binge worthy or no?
I think it's something that people should watch. I don't know about binging it, but I think it's
Well, I
definitely
mean, it's a
something,
movie,
a
so like,
requirement. I
should
mean, in
we
terms
watch
of
it or
just,
should we not watch it? That's what I mean.
but this is not just for entertainment. This is, you need to watch this. Whether you man, woman, with a child, or I think this is something that you should watch with your children, boys and girls. So that's my last
All
hurrah.
right, ladies and gentlemen, that's Cuties. Next up, we moving into our adaptations. Okay, so this is it's actually adaptations and remakes. The two that we have tonight are adaptations. The first one is another Tyler Perry film, For Colored Girls, which is based on the original play For Colored Girls Only, who've considered suicide when the rainbow is not enough.
Right.
Yeah. All right. I hated it.
I'm not gonna say I hated it because
Okay, hate is a strong word. I
yeah.
strongly disliked it. I do not
Okay.
really recommend it. What I recommend you do, first of all, I think it's a story that everyone needs to see. I think it's a story that absolutely, the collection
Yeah.
of stories really, that absolutely needs to be told. But do not watch this film. Okay?
Why though?
Wait till
Why? I'm
COVID, wait
interested.
until COVID is over. Find it at your
But why? Why though? Why
okay.
though?
Um
Because before you start
okay.
talking, I'm
So
gonna say nothing was changed about this in terms of
and
the
yet
script.
and yet
But
and yet
only thing that was different
mhm.
was we saw the men that was referred to, and Whoopi Goldberg's character was added as a kind of a antagonist because there was no antagonist
And
in this other
I
than the men.
ain't need to see none of that. And not because not that I didn't need to see it. Something and this is and I remember when this movie came out and I saw it
Mhm.
and I immediately had this reaction and
But why? What was the reaction? Why? Like,
the reaction was simply
mhm.
that we live in this time period now where we become so desensitized to visual shit that it's just way more powerful to watch a woman stand on stage and tell her story. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah,
I don't know how else to put it. I
this was
like
one
it
of the
took something
moments.
watching. Okay, so like I remember seeing For Colored Girls and being
Mhm,
damn near almost in tears around the story about the woman who has the children with the military vet who is unstable.
mhm.
Okay, you know what happens without giving. I don't want to give anything away for those who may have not have seen the play or the movie, but we know what happens, right? And watching that on screen just wasn't as powerful as when you watch someone bear tell that story. It
I,
just
but and this may be the only time in life that you see me defend Tyler Perry because Tyler Perry picked this movie because he had very little to do. There was no real direction from Tyler Perry. I can tell by the caliber of women that he chose to
mhm.
be these various
I
colors
would
in this.
love to see them do the stage play. God.
But see, we have to understand with adaptations that there will always be a twist. And especially when you add something to film, it has to be full and well rounded. So, most people who came to see this had seen For Color Girls in some shape or fashion in a theater setting. So you're not going to get the same experience the same way. And my best example of this is The Color Purple. You're not going to get the same story that you get in a book, that you get in the movie, that you get in the stage musical. You're not going to get the same story. And I think people only reacted to this being a bad movie because it was Tyler Perry. That was the only reason that people did not like this. And you can say what you want, but I believe subconsciously people did not like this because he didn't change one word. The only thing that he added was Whoopi Goldberg, and Whoopi Goldberg didn't have any um lines, so to speak. She was like this she was the other antagonist in the play other than the men. The men were the natural antagonists, but the women, though, this woman, the lady in white, was added. That was the only thing that was added. I think people had a big issue with that, but because it was Whoopi Goldberg, it made so much sense, and it was the conflict that was kind of like the pushing down of the domino. It was like she was that initial push to make all the pieces move. I love seeing it in this format because it added another dimension to it, and we never got to see any of those. And it wasn't about the men, but we got to see the mirror image of what they were kind of depicting on stage. We got to see it. I loved it. That's why I love adaptations that can do that. And we're so used to stretching our minds, and we got to just sit back and watch the story this time in a totally different way. And again, this will be the only time you'll ever see me defend Tyler Perry. But Tyler Perry could have directed this at home in his bed, because these women, I know for sure, probably with the exception of Janet Jackson, had all done these monologues at some point.
So
and stepped into it effortlessly.
I have nothing against the performances of the women. That was always the highlight of the movie for me. But nah, I disagree. And I want to say this. I also want to say this. I absolutely agree with you that it is possible the whole subconscious it's Tyler Perry thing, because I've seen that in other.
But he let it just be
with
what
other
it
films and other films. But Nate, you also got to recognize that what you're saying is the reason why people didn't like For Colored Girls is what we praised in our first episode. We praised Fences for the exact same thing. The fact that you didn't have to change he didn't change anything. He didn't really add nothing. He didn't add no extra character, whether you thought it was good or bad. Like what you had, like August Wilson's words remained intact in Fences. The same thing with For Colored Girls. I'm just saying, and like understand, like
but if this was to be made a movie, you would have had to.
Let me say this. Let me say this. And maybe this will clear it up for you. If you had to make a movie, this is as good as you're gonna get. This was good. I'm saying they should have never made it a movie. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that this work of art. There are okay. I'll give you a perfect example. I'll give you a perfect example, and I don't want to go over time. So I don't want to go over too much time. So I'm gonna give you a perfect example. A perfect example of this is Stephen King. People have tried to much dismay to translate the writing of Stephen King to film. It almost never works. There's been a few, very few bright spots, but when you think about how much of his work has gone to film, and it's just there is something about his writing that just doesn't. It just exists in its medium
I
perfectly.
understand it. I
And I just feel
understand.
like for colored girls it was the same
I
way.
I
I
understand why a lot of women were upset at this. I
Why
really
were
do.
women? I didn't know women were upset
It was a
at the
lot. It was a
movie.
lot. Yes, it was a lot of backlash because they just felt like once again Tyler Perry was trying to depict the
Oh,
woman's
because of the
experience.
Tyler Perry thing.
But
So
I don't
so
think that that's fair because I've directed all women casts before,
well, it's not
or
fair.
things that it's
It's
not.
not. It's not
But
fair.
I think this was, and it could be done better. I'm sure it could be.
I didn't have
But every
you want to know what my
adaptation,
problem with the movie was? I don't want you to think that I think that this is a bad film. I don't think that it's a bad film. The problem for me was that I had seen the play several times, and
right? And every time it was different.
the emotional impact that I got from the stage productions, it was just far superior to what I
But
got in the
that's
film.
theater in general, though. Theater will always evoke you because you're in the room
I don't know
feeling
about
that.
that. I don't know about that.
You are,
I
it
mean,
will always be.
you
That's
have
the
some
theater will always
things,
do that to you.
yo, like this was different. Like there's other theater productions that have gone on to film to great acclaim. A Few Good Men is better as a movie than it was on stage.
But I'm
There
telling you,
are
there was already an
the, co-
explicit bias
the,
against this film already because it was Tyler Perry.
Hey,
If
yo,
it was
that
any
makes
other
sense. I'm
director,
just telling you
if
that I generally like Tyler Perry movies, and I didn't like this, and I didn't like this
and I
because
don't, I'm the
I did
exact
not feel
opposite.
like
I don't like his film
the power
or stage plays.
and the impact that you have that sits on your soul when you're leaving a production
But
of For
that's
Colored
theater,
Girls
though.
is
That's
not the
theater.
same as this.
But
Well, if you're not
that's
gonna be
theater.
listen, yo, if you're not gonna be able to match it, don't do it.
But that's not the point of it because if you look at The
It
Color
is
Purple,
kind of the point.
it's not the point because if you look at
The
other
color purple is
adaptations,
the color purple is
and
like
I
a
use that word,
phenomenon. It's a universal
but
classic.
I say it, but at the same time, the script changed from the movie to the play,
I'm
from the
not
book.
talking about it changing or
I'm
not
no,
changing, Nate. I'm
but
telling
listen to what
you,
I'm saying though. You just listening to the first word I say. Listen to the whole context. I'm saying that in this film, nothing changed other than we saw even the character of the lady in white, Whoopi Goldberg. That character was still like the thread that went through the
Nate.
whole story.
I hear you. I'm
But
saying that
I
ain't
just
it.
think,
It ain't it. That's not my
but that's how
reasoning.
I see
That's
it. That's
not
how
the
I see it.
reasoning for me not liking it.
I'm not. Well, I
Right?
wasn't trying to defend
Uh,
why you didn't like it. I'm just saying what I got out
you're
of it,
trying to propose
and I'm
why
not.
everybody else didn't like it.
No, I'm not. I'm saying for me, I'm not a fan of Tyler Perry. So when I heard he was doing this, I was like, he about to change this and flip it, and I was
And he did.
thoroughly surprised when it was the same script. I was surprised because this is one of those pieces, and I've personally directed a piece like this that is a karaoke poem, and it's hard to work a karaoke poem and adapt it. It's very hard to change it because it's already set in its
But he didn't.
own
But
structure.
we already established that he didn't change anything. What I'm saying is that there's a visceral there's a point to Colored Girls. Like I would assume that there's a reason why you don't see these things play out on stage outside of the woman telling her story
I
in
loved
the
it
show.
because they added the
And
guys.
and
I
watching
love
them
that they
and
added
that was
that.
the other thing. The guys we could have had it without them. None of them matched the energy of any of the women in the
They
performance.
wasn't supposed to because they were just
So
basically
why?
puppets
So
for
then
this.
that brings me back to
But
my
it was
point.
just another
Why did we
perspective
need to
of
see
it.
them?
But it was just another perspective of this
There's
story.
no perspective. They just threw guys in there so they could.
No, it wasn't because these guys were
All right, let me
already
ask you this:
mentioned
the
in the play
playwright could
itself.
have had these guys in the show.
And I've seen
Playwright made a
adaptations
choice
where they added them
not to have
in
anyone
shadows.
other than a woman on stage conveying her
Yeah, but
story.
I've seen it where
Lose
men were
that in
shadow
the movie.
characters in
You
it. I've
lose
seen
that.
it.
You lose that in the movie.
I think for me, it really highlighted the importance that we needed. We needed that. not necessarily on stage, but in this film, I would not have liked it if it was just like the theater
I'm just
because
saying
it didn't need to be.
they should have did a movie where like you know how what's it
We
Hamilton.
got one more minute too.
Yeah, they should have did it like Hamilton. They should have just filmed the
Mm,
Broadway production.
I think this perspective was needed, and I'm gonna leave it at that. But I think it was needed, just for
I
the
didn't
next
care
step
for it.
of it.
I still think that if I still think if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. I think that you should definitely check out a actual production in the theater of it. I think that
Mhm.
the theater version, I think the version that you see in the theater, um, for no other reason than it's just a more powerful, in my opinion, it's a more powerful
It
perspective.
becomes full circle, and I always refer back to The Color Purple because there are no other versions there are no other versions other than this that you have all three of those perspectives, and it's not that one. Well, in this case, the theatrical performance, it leaves you in a certain way because your mind has to then go other places beyond what you physically see. This you physically see where your mind naturally goes to. Like what did it look like for him to toss that baby out the window, or what did it look like
I ain't even
for
had that question. And when I watched it, I ain't had that question
well,
because
that's what I see.
I
I
saw a
see.
woman on stage reacting to just thinking about this point in her life. And
Well,
that was enough.
and this is
And that was
this is the
enough.
hardship. This is the hardship.
That conveyed the emotion
And
perfectly.
that's fine, but sometimes the other perspectives are important, just as significant and as important. It was important for me to see males in this version of it. And often you have to adapt things where it's something that's slid to the side or inserted in it that kind of gives it a different perspective. And I think that's the hardship when you see one version and think that that's it. We don't want to see that. And it's often I have that feeling about other adaptations and other sequels. I don't often want to see it done again because it kind of ruins the feeling. But for me, it was just like Fences to me. And but this is different because poetry it's made to be shaped and molded. The visual around it is made to be shaped and molded, and you can do it differently every single time. But I like this version of it. I loved it. I'm not saying I liked it better than a stage or even a book, but I
Mhm.
like this version of it.
So look, check it out. Tell us what y'all thought. Because we want to know. Nah, I didn't care for it. Never have. Nate loves it. It's his favorite Tyler Perry production, or the one Tyler Perry production that he think
Yeah,
Tyler Perry definitely got right. And
yeah.
and to that, I want to say this: like,
He
I
didn't put
don't
his
like
hand
the
in it.
film mostly because I just think that it works better as a play. Um, but I agree with you as far as the choices that Tyler Perry made.
He didn't make
I
any
didn't.
choices. He didn't. I'm
Yeah,
telling
well,
you.
that was a choice.
Other than add
That was a
Lady
choice.
in White, that was the only choice
That
he
was a choice.
made.
And I didn't mind. And I didn't mind the Lady in White. I just thought that it was a pointless movie because it works better as a play.
Hmm.
My only that was my only thing about it. But check it out. Let us know what you think in the comments. We would love to know. Moving on, our other adaptation. How can I describe this? This was my like slice of white guilty pleasure for 3 weeks.
This all you, because I'm gonna
uh
just say up front,
the left
I ain't about that life.
HBO's The Leftovers, which I absolutely like. I enjoyed it from front to back.
Mm,
I thought it was great television.
mm.
It was suspenseful, it was mystery, it had some action in it. But it was mostly just for me, it was something that really just kind of got your brain working a little bit, got you thinking, and not so much about the show itself, but just the situation that the characters find themselves in. So The Leftovers is about
Leftovers.
um It's not. It really. Well, I guess you could call them leftovers. So basically, what is described in the Bible as the rapture happens. Okay, something like 2.4% of the world's population vanishes on all at the same time on the same day at the exact same time. They simply just
Blow
vanish.
your nose.
They I'm sorry. I'm yeah, my allergies start kicking in the late night. So I apologize for the sniffling. I want to step away, but I didn't want to step away because I'm
Well, we got the
recording.
last one coming up, so we'll be
Um
good.
all right. So the leftovers basically what's described in the Bible as the rapture happens. 2.4% of the world's population disappears all at the same time. The show is about the effect that has on the world. Um,
Right.
so it picks up 3 years after this happened. Now, obviously, science is trying to figure out what happens. No one knows what happens to these people. They literally just vanish. And you actually, just not to give too much away, but you don't find out what happens to these people until the very last episode. It's only 3 seasons. It's 10 episodes per season. It's a real breezy watch.
So what happens to him?
I'm not telling you. Why would
I'm
I
not.
tell
Oh well,
you what
because I'm
happened?
not. My mind not. They got
All
to
right.
do a better
So
way of telling the
so
story.
the story, Nate wanted the story to be about the people who disappeared. The
No, I
story,
just wanted
the
a better
show,
story. Just tell a story better.
the show is excellent. It's about what
Mm-mm.
happens to these people when this pivotal event happens, and there's no explanation. They have no there's nothing. Science can't figure it out. Religion is
Well, they're not listening to
is
the religious
mystified.
people.
The right. So like, and what happens is apparently the religions, the major religions kind of break down, because
Mm-hmm.
if you remember, there's something specific that's supposed to happen at the rapture. Like the rapture
Yeah.
happens, and then there are signs and things that follow up. But this
Yeah.
picks up 3 years later, where it's become clear that whatever has happened doesn't seem to be the hand of God for a lot of people. Like the religion, even the religious sector can't figure it out. So there are a main group of cast, and they're all related for the most part. It's like one family in the first season and a couple other people. It's actually two families. There's a brother and sister, and then a family and how they're coping with this. There is a religious sect that has popped up all across the world.
Mm-hmm.
And their whole thing is why everybody is kind of, and like it's funny because if you realize that this is what would happen, and this is kind of what would happen in real life. Like if
Yep. Told
it
you
would be a
so.
thing, and then we would start moving on with our lives. So there's this cult that pops up, and their only purpose is really they just want to make sure that people don't forget. And so there's a storyline with that. But it really kind of it introduces you to these people, and then it later starts to introduce you to this event, and like the effect that it had. Like these people were in different stages of life. They were already dealing with the regular everyday life stuff, and then this event happens, and I mean, they like people just disappeared. And so the show deals a lot with mental illness, belief. Um, it has some religious aspects to it, but I think what drew me to it was that I watched it and I was just like, "Yo, this is exactly what it would be like if an event like that happened." I thought it was very well thought out. There is that aspect of what I love is that non-linear storytelling. It is not prevalent in the show, but it does exist, and it exists in a very purposeful and intentional way. But some people it's not their cup of tea. I thought that it was a very interesting take in the sense that people disappear, and it's usually always about finding the people who disappeared.
I think it
And
should have
then,
been a movie. If
and
it
then
was a
this,
movie, I would have been able
and
to finish
this
it.
show is very, very much about the effect that that disappearance has had on those who are the leftovers, who remain behind. Now, Nate, do you really want to know what happens to him?
I don't. I really don't like. If, like I just said, if it was a movie, I would have been able
I'll
to
tell you.
get into it. But it just.
But I think the payoff is so much better if you watch it. And I'm
Okay.
pretty sure you've wasted 3 seasons on worse.
I have a
What you're
good
not gonna do
instinct
is sit
when
here
it
and tell
comes
me.
to.
What you're not gonna do is sit here and act like this show was bad. Like if it's something you're
It
not
was.
into, whatever. But
No,
it's
I'm
not.
just saying.
It's
For
absolutely.
me.
Hold on. Time out. It's absolutely not bad. This show is universally
Okay.
critically acclaimed. It has some of the highest ratings of any. Now, and I don't mean people watching it. I'm talking about from people watching it and critical reviews. It has some of the highest ratings of any television show ever. It's only 3 seasons long. And if you were ever into shows like Lost or Heroes or some of those shows that kind of incorporated different elements meshed with various characters, some of those shows kind of went off the rails. This one is a very, very tightly controlled narrative.
It
Um,
just didn't do it for me. It
if you
didn't.
like,
It has to. It
if
has
you
to
like,
start.
if you like Lost, if you like Watchmen, the recent HBO show, the same guy is responsible for all of this.
But you have to.
So
For me, is it. I don't grade art good or bad. I'm critical, but it's not a pass fail for me. It's just I'm the way you start a story is very important to me, and it can't be a slow start. It can't be like I literally there, and I have an instinct about what I like and what I don't like. And the first like episode to me really will determine whether I'm gonna continue watching this. However, I kept watching this and it just did not flow
and that's
for
fine.
me.
I'm not
Message
knocking.
aside, I
It's
just
fine.
didn't.
I'm not knocking your perspective. I'm just gonna
Mm-mm.
be but I am gonna advocate my perspective. I thought that it was one of the more well done, and it's not. It's been off the air now for. They did 3 seasons, and that was it. And it was wrapped up very neatly. Um,
It should have been a movie.
it could
It should
have
have
been
been a
a movie,
movie.
but this show there's some serious character arcs that I just wouldn't have fit in a regular movie time. Um, I think that you could have made a movie out of this,
Mm-hmm.
but I think you would have lost. I think you would have lost a lot of the emotional depth that some of this goes into. Um, I mean, Nate, you and I have very different tastes, and I will say that I usually will not pass like not judgment, but if I get through if I get through the third episode and I'm still not feeling it, then I typically will like feel comfortable about walking away or not continuing. I think that in this age of more long form storytelling, meaning that you don't have to tell a whole story in a 90 to 120 minute time frame, which is the average time for a movie. I think that filmmakers I think that filmmakers are more comfortable starting off slow and kind of building to an actual climax. Which means that I think that it would benefit a lot of us if we kind of held on to certain shows a little longer. And you don't have to. By all means, if the first episode don't capture you, don't and you don't
And
feel
it's I feel like
like
it's a story that's already been told. I feel like
told
it
where.
just did not just it was and it wasn't even the layers of stories that were being told, but it was no it just didn't meld together for me. And I was skipping ahead and I was trying to see whether it was something because sometimes you'll have something that like Ratchet. For me, it wasn't until I can't remember my name, the black lady came into this insane asylum that it made sense to me. And it made me say, oh, you know what? Let me go back and get this story so I can be caught up to when she comes and then I'll follow it. It wasn't one of those, like, even when I skipped ahead, I should have maybe went to the end. If I would have went to the end, it would have probably made me go back. And sometimes I watch series backward.
You know,
But
for somebody who is a theater actor, I'm surprised at your viewpoint, because imagine if people were like, I'm walking out in the first 30 minutes of a play.
you have never done that?
No.
Oh, I have.
Really?
No, because I don't want to.
But
Why wait?
Hold on. I'm not
That mean that's
talking.
bad directing at that point.
I'm not talking about the acting, or I'm just saying the story.
Yeah,
Like,
out
on
yeah.
plays because they haven't got going in the first 20 to 30 minutes.
I treat a bad play just like I treat a late professor. I give you 15, 20 minutes, and if I'm not feeling it, I ain't feeling it. Like, I could be honest, I love August Wilson, but I don't like his last play. And I know why I don't like the play. I
Because it takes a
understand
while
it.
to get into it.
It's not even that. I just don't feel like I feel like that was his first draft, his first or second draft for that play. I don't feel like that play was workshopped enough for it to be a complete to the series. I don't feel like that. You know, I just feel like it just wasn't. And I've watched some of my favorite people do that play, and I just couldn't get into it. And that's just I just have an instinct about what I am going to enjoy. And it's not anything like, it's not just the wigs or the set or just the acting, because bad acting can be laughable and I could get through it that way.
You could get through it, right? Yeah.
But if it doesn't gel for me, like for me, off the back, I can tell when something should have been a movie. And I feel like that should have been a movie. I feel like certain things shouldn't be a movie. I feel like it should be a TV show where the story, where there's so much going on. But some things need to be a series. It needs to be a series. And this weekend. I binge watched the 3 seasons of a show, and it was so simplistic and it was goofy, but I liked it. Like, it had a message behind it, and it was hard for me to, you know, the little morsels that often a movie can drop on something. I was looking for those to kind of get me to the next episode, and I wasn't finding that. I was seeing a lot of
In the
overacting.
leftovers.
Yeah, I was seeing a lot of
I think
overacting.
so the one thing that I can say about the leftovers is that it is a very gloomy show.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, but when you think about the overall premise, right? Like, and just to give you some context, like, the main character, his wife was on the table in the middle of a sonogram and watched her baby disappear. The main female character in the show had a husband and 2 children. And the last thing that she said, like, she was waiting for a phone call about a job, and her children were being the rambunctious regular children that that normal children are. And the daughter accidentally knocked over a glass of orange juice onto the table, and her mother's cell phone was on the table. The last thing she said to her child was something in the vein of, like, watch what you're doing. And she turned around to get a paper towel to dry off her phone. And when she turned around, her entire family was gone.
Yeah. And that would pique my interest. That would be something that get me to the next one. But
the main character, he was having issues with his wife and was in the middle of having an affair with a person that he happened to meet in his job.
Sex with her
and she disappeared.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, these people, like the show is about how people process and deal with trauma, and
Yeah.
like that trauma is like something that I don't think any of us could imagine. And to watch it play out on screen and to watch how different people take meaning in it. And I think that was what was so interesting, was that some people kind of wrote it off and some people took deep meaning in that event. And just watching how those people interact and how they clashed, yeah, that did it for me.
Like,
I mean,
it was somebody that kept shooting dogs, and I was like, "What the? Where the fuck is this?"
right. So
Here?
what you find out though is that he's absolutely right. Whatever has happened has changed the ecosystem of even the animals. So what you find out later in the series is that the dogs actually are dangerous. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like something that happened, like what, like you, and it's a lot of foreshadowing. That's what I love about the show. You kind of have to pay attention because there's a lot of foreshadowing. Like, in the last episode, like, because we had gotten so used to the non-linear storytelling and the foreshadowing and things like that.
Where did you get this term from, sir? Because you love non-linear.
Well, non-linear just means it's not,
I understand,
that's
but
a real term. But
right.
in the show, they get so good with it that they literally like pull they basically pull a David Copperfield in the first episode of the last season right in front of you. And like you don't even realize it until the last episode of the season. Because that's just how good they had gotten with it.
I really get what you're saying. I really understand what
I
you're
know we got
saying.
a lot of differences, but I know you like good shit. I know you have.
I
great
just don't. But it has to speak to me though.
Again, I think you need to check it out again. I think you need to give it time.
I'm telling you, like, even today, like, I was like, let me try this. And this morning I put it on, and it was just
episode, and just dig in and just watch it. Just give it 4 episodes, but really pay attention.
I was, but like the first time I went to sit down and watch it, I was watching it. But I didn't fall asleep. I walked away. Like, I didn't even have nothing to do over there. I just was like, no.
Like, all right.
I just couldn't get into it. It was like,
this is coming from somebody who likes this show. If you could binge The Good Place in 2 days, you could watch this.
It was just I couldn't. That's 2 different things to me.
It is 2 different things, but what I'm saying is that
I felt the same way.
Like the leftovers. Hold on. Like The Leftovers, The Good Place it relies on this really kind of wacky, kind of off the wall premise.
But I didn't get wacky from this. I just got serious, and it wasn't that serious.
It is more serious. And but what I'm saying is this is kind of like this outlandish, kind of wild premise.
And I'm quite sure it's great. I'm quite sure it's great. But the same thing that I got from, say, like a Walking Dead. Like, you watch it and you like, okay, this is gonna get more interesting. So let me get to the next episode. And you like, this should have just been a video game. This should have just been a video game. This is not a TV series.
Oh, you're so
and that's how I see things in formats. That's why I was so like, I think for Color Girls, and this was a different format. So it just put me in a different mindset. This was just a lot of budget. I just saw a big budget. That's what I saw. I saw the TV series I just talked, Walking Dead. I saw Bird Box. I saw those things, and I forced myself to watch Bird Box, and I hated it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I felt from this, and I was like, I'm not putting myself through that again. I hated Bird Box. I didn't hate Walking Dead.
Chill out, because Bird Box and Walking Dead, we definitely gonna have to put them on the list.
I already saw it, so I can
don't tell us how you feel yet.
I just wasn't in. I'm quite sure it's a great story, but
I'm gonna give The Leftovers extremely binge worthy. It's one of it is definitely in my top 10 television shows at least drama television shows of all time.
If they lock us down again and they say we can't go outside, then I'll watch it again.
Oh, so you about to watch it anyway, so I ain't tripping.
That's the only way I'm gonna watch it. And it gotta be a blizzard outside, so I can't even go stand on the steps. Nah. It gotta be somewhere I'm locked in my room. That's when I'm watching it. I just can't.
So, our TV show for the evening, even though we just finished talking about a TV show, this is the work in our TV show category officially, and that is How to Get Away with Murder.
I think they just needed better lighting, and I would have given it 100%. That was it. Well, I thought it was disrespectful to make it so dark, and Viola Davis is dark skinned. I just thought it wasn't great lighting.
Trying to compliment her skin tone?
No.
Do you think it? Because I know that lighting is a tricky thing.
No, white people just don't know how to light black people.
Well, how you know it was white? How you know it was a white person doing the lighting? Like by this time, Shonda Rhimes was doing her thing, and she was hiring whoever the hell she wanted.
It was very clear.
I mean, that's a fair. That's fair. I like. I don't.
That was the only thing for me though.
With the I never know when it comes to the lighting, because you're right. Like our skin tone is it's just different. It's different, and like if
you can't put us under the blue lighting.
Yeah,
you can't do that to us. I don't care how light you are. Don't put us under no blue lighting because we gonna look like we're in a casket.
My only issue with How to Get Away with Murder was my same issue with Scandal. I felt like it retread a lot of covered ground. But other than that, the one thing that I loved about the one issue that I had with How to Get Away with Murder was the same issue that I had with Scandal, which is what I just said. I think they covered a lot of they kept kind of coming back to similar plot threads and similar issues. The stakes were similarly the same. But the one thing that I loved about both shows was that they had this phenomenal cast that sold me that shit every week. When before How to Get Away with Murder, I remember Scandal, and I was thinking like, yo, they just keep on bringing up the same shit. Her daddy bag, her mama crazy, Fitz or Jake. She banging Fitz, she banging Jake. She don't know. She loved Fitz, she loved Jake.
But Scandal was a different type of storyline. But
it was a different type of storyline. That's true. But I don't think it was I don't think the storyline differences really warranted the retreading of already covered material. But I will say, like, the cast sold it every time. They just did.
But if you the same way you laid out Leftovers, that's the same way that this TV show does. Like there's back and forth, and there's things that are planted.
I'm not talking about foreshadowing. And
no, I just said that's what I just said.
Oh.
I'm saying the way you just described that is how this TV series is laid out, because there are a lot of things that are planted in a season, in one episode, that you won't even need until the next season. Or
no, it was excellent. Like don't, I'm not taking anything away from, like, you know, like no work of art is perfect in my opinion. They all got their flaws, but I don't want you to think that what I was pointing out was taken away from it. I loved How to Get Away with Murder. Like I thought that the performances was great. I loved the representation in the show. And I thought the writing was top notch. I mean, Shonda Rhimes, she ain't never let us down. Like, that's all. That one show, she did come out with one show that didn't do so well, but other than that, she like 6 for 7 right now. So she good.
I like this one. It's something that you have to watch from the beginning. It's not one of those series where you can come in.
No, it's not.
Like midway.
It absolutely is.
And it you have to understand the relationship, and you get the relationship amongst that core cast. But I don't like throwaway characters. I don't like characters that did we need to see her mom? Was her mom really important?
Right.
And there were a couple episodes where it was relevant, but did she had to move in with her? Did that make like I don't
Yeah,
like
I
throwaway
felt like,
characters.
and I felt like they say like, yeah, like I felt like they retreaded some stuff that they had tried and with Scandal, because I never felt like her mom needed to be in it, right? Like,
Or I
I don't
think her
know.
mom needed a bigger role, like keeping her locked up for the whole movie, her whole TV
Well,
series was
that's what
stupid.
I mean about her not needing to be in it. Because I feel like they only brought it in because I think the father character was more popular than they thought when they originally wrote him in. And they kind of just, in order to keep his storyline relevant, is like, let's just add in a mom. And it was just like, for what? Like, do we really need this?
Well, the mother was mentioned very early on. It was just, I
Yeah,
felt
no.
like they didn't utilize her until towards the end, and that was like you should have just made her like a Carmen San Diego character, like she was just committing all these crimes around the world. Like use her that way, where you always trying to find
Right.
her.
Instead, y'all always got to lock up.
Right, right, and you just always miss her every single time. Like
Mm-hmm.
one of those storylines, but to just keep her locked in a hole like that was crazy. But this TV series wasn't one that I really was faithful with, but I'm not a big TV watcher. And this was
Yeah.
one of those, I did that with Scandal and I just hated having to like always be there and watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But this was one of the
They're both on Netflix now.
Yeah, but How
One
to Get Away with Murder, it was this one didn't play like Scandal did. Like Scandal, you could get Hulu and watch it the next morning. How to Get Away with Murder wasn't like that until towards the end. And then it started being, on other platforms. But I liked it. I just wish it had better lighting. Um yeah, I just wish
I
it
would
had better lighting.
absolute binge. Um, I think the acting is really good, with the exception of the lighting, which I noticed and agree with Nate. With the exception of the lighting, I thought that the production is really good. The writing is really tight. This is the Shonda Rhimes creation production. If you're not familiar with the name Shonda Rhimes, that's Grey's Anatomy, that's Private Practice, that's Scandal. Um, Basically was running NBC for a long time, and she just recently signed a deal with Netflix. So I think
Because
that.
they didn't give her they didn't want to give her nanny
Do you
a
believe that
buddy
story?
pass. I believe it.
You do?
I honestly believe it. I honestly believe it. Shonda Rhimes seems that petty to me.
Oh, okay.
Because she could have clearly bought that lady a ticket out of her own money.
Nah, well, so you know what they say. Sometimes it's the principle. It's the principality.
$140 principal. Okay.
I mean, hey, like, yo, like, she not gonna lose no sleep.
She
Like, if
not.
you like, the funny thing is, like, if that story is true, I agree. I think that's a little petty, right? But who's the biggest loser here, honestly? Because it ain't Shonda Rhimes.
Her actors that was in those shows.
Well, no, I don't think any of her shows got canceled because of that.
I mean, it's not about.
Well, I don't know when this happened, but the Shonda Rhimes deal with Netflix just happened like recently.
Well, that probably was something already in the work.
Like, other than Grey's Anatomy, most of her shows had already wrapped. Like How to Get Away with Murder had wrapped, Scandal had wrapped. I think the only one that's still currently running is Grey's Anatomy, and I think she was pretty hands off with that at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but like I'm very excited to see what comes from her next with Netflix.
Right.
Moving on, our last category for tonight are our documentaries. Nate's gonna take away our documentaries for tonight. That's his thing.
So the first one, I'll just go through that one. That's the two killings of
Okay. We're gonna do that one first.
The two killings of Sam Cooke. And I enjoyed this because I actually directed a play based off of one of the documentaries. Well, not the doc, one of the books written by his family, that alleges that his wife is the killer. His where his wife was the killer. And it tells a very sad story of how this man's career, his innovation, his hard work was all overshadowed by his untimely death, him being found shot dead, by allegedly by the hotel innkeeper. He was found naked with nothing more than a robe on, the hotel robe on, and it's sad that his life amounted to this one moment. And I remember in this one, it has a quote from Muhammad Ali that says, "If this was Sinatra or Elvis or anybody else, it would have been more people, but they treated this, it would have been more of a case. The FBI would have gotten involved. But because this was a black man, Sam Cooke, they treated him as if it was just another black person dead. And this was at a time where we wasn't really equal, and we wasn't treated, we were outwardly treated as if we weren't equal. And this is it's a very sad documentary because I'm tired of watching documentaries on people and it's a death. I really suggest these stars and celebrities start making their own movies, and telling their own story, and not allowing all these people to speculate and to sum your life up in a dash and interviews and speculation and it just was nasty and it was ugly, and I didn't once again I didn't like it. But in me doing a play, that's just the controversy around his life. He played hard, he worked hard, and he died hard. And to sum up a man's life in just those three phrases is horrible, because he did so much, and many people get credit for being the first, but he ultimately was the first to do a lot of things, like have his own music label and unfortunately his family doesn't even own the rights to any of his stuff. Some company, the manager that he had, well, the partner that he had at the time, absconded with all the rights to everything and still own that company, even though that man is dead and gone. Both of them, the company that was allegedly started falsely, still owns it. So watch it. Is if you are a fan of Sam Cooke, it is an interesting interview, but it's not going to give you anything more than what you already know about the
Wow.
scandalous side of it, unfortunately. Um, and I guess the last one
Is the last offering of the night is What Happened, Miss Simone, which is the documentary about Nina Simone.
and unfortunately, this the same story. Just the same story. It's a um the sum of her life is wrapped up in her mental illness that ultimately took her over her life, and towards the end of her life, because she didn't get the help that she needed along the way, she was forced to be put on a medication that would help her to cope on a day-to-day basis, but ultimately crippled her and her career, and turned her into, kind of, her speech was slurred, her coordination wasn't together, and eye coordination, hand-eye coordination is what you need to be a singer slash pianist. And so many people have ripped this lady off, bootlegged her music. There's so many albums that were put out in her name that she didn't authorize, that she didn't create, and they basically just ripped off her music. One of the saddest moments in this documentary towards the end is you see an older Nina Simone that is just tired, and she kept, throughout the movie, you would hear her say, "I'm tired," more and more and more. And at this point, she apologizes for not sticking to her initial her initial goal was to be a classical pianist that played at Carnegie Hall. That's the only dream she ever had, and never got to fulfill that dream. And she had to deal with such racism and segregation, and from a very young age, domestic violence from her husband, and all she wanted was just a balance of it, and she never got that balance because they worked her and worked her and worked her. And even after her husband and her separated, she ended up losing everything. And she was another tragic story. Died penniless, almost broke, and could compared to where she was at the height of her career. She added so much to the fabric of civil rights, working with both Martin and Malcolm X. She lived next door to Malcolm and his family, and she really was great at what she did. But again, we get another tragic story that is summed up by the least amount of what happened to them. And that overshadows the greatest aspect of who they are. But it was a sad movie to watch. Right, I had seen this movie years ago, and her daughter is one of the ones. And people don't know, but she does have a daughter, who's a performer as well now. But she narrates a big portion of this movie, along a documentary, along with many of the producers and musicians that worked alongside her. And it was just an overall sadness that just follows her throughout her life, that she never really got over the hump of. But she definitely enjoyed her stage time. That was the time that she felt her freest, and her getting involved with the with Malcolm X and a lot of the radical activists that turned her career on its side and restricted an already restricted career, her being a black woman. But these two films, unfortunately, he didn't. Sam Cooke didn't die broke. He was a very wealthy man when he died, but it was tragic in how he died. But Nina Simone died penniless and broke, in Europe, and it's just sad watching these documentaries. So it's one of the reasons that I really want to do this, because I'm a big documentary person.
Yeah.
But it tells us a lot of history. It gives us a lot of insight on who these people were, but it also allows us to see a full of story and who they are. And I'm a big person on tell your story. Don't give people the power over your story, because it'll be filled with their sensationalism and speculation. Tell your story while you still can. One of my biggest regrets is not interviewing my great grandmother when I had an opportunity. Take your family story and you create it. Don't let people die off without at least having a conversation that you can journal about. So that story then lives on, and somebody can read that and be able to tell another person. But yeah, so this was the
'Cause
last
that's how
one.
we passed our stories down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we've gotten away from that, and I'm tired of these docu series and biopics that don't really tell the story, and they're all rushed, or they're all based off of somebody trying to make a couple dollars. Look how many biopics there are on Whitney and Michael, and it's just
Yeah.
sad. It's tasteless, it's sad, but it also tells you that you need to do the proper paperwork to really own who you are, because most of these people wouldn't even be able to write a story if you really owned who you are, and many of these people didn't. So everybody gets to continue to make money off this person while they're no longer living. But that's it.
Thank you so much, y'all. We'll see y'all next Tuesday. This is the Binge Worthy Podcast with G Oliver and Nate Couser. When you get a chance, please, one of the things we want you to do is to like the you don't have to like it. If you don't like it, don't like it. But we would want to hear from you. So leave us a comment. Tell us what you thought. Tell us what you think we should be checking out, that we should be reviewing. We are definitely paying attention to the feedback that we get from our listeners. Please don't forget to follow us. We are on Instagram at binge_worthy_podcast. We're on Facebook at the Real Binge Worthy Podcast, and on YouTube at the Artist Exchange Radio Show. And we'll see you guys back here next Tuesday at 3:00.
There we go.